My name is Clara Hamilton, and I'm 41 years old. I've spent much of my adult life teaching business administration at a university in Denver, a job I love for how it fuels my curiosity and connects me with bright young minds. For 17 years, I was married to a man named Lucas, a successful partner at a law firm. On paper, we were the ideal couple. A cozy suburban home, stable incomes, consistent vacations, a supportive family environment. It was a marriage I once assumed was solid, if not perfect. But looking back, I realized it wasn't just little cracks hidden beneath the surface. Fissures had been widening for a long time. I simply refused to see them. Lucas and I first met in college. He was charming, witty, and brought me a sense of excitement I had never experienced before. We built a life together, weathering financial troubles after the 2008 crisis and supporting each other's careers as best we could. Over the years, though, his late nights at the office grew more frequent. Social events at his law firm became more exclusive, often leaving me uninvited. He would come home with crisp shirts that seemed too perfectly pressed to have endured a long day at work, and once, I caught a faint whiff of a perfume that wasn't mine lingering on his suit jacket. My concerns always blossomed into small worries, but I was good at burying them. Don't be paranoid, I'd tell myself. He's stressed. He's working harder than ever to secure that partnership. I remember nights cooking dinner alone, meticulously plating a meal in the vain hope he'd be home at a reasonable hour. Sometimes he wouldn't show up until nearly midnight. But one evening, in the quiet hush of our bedroom, a single ping on his phone shattered my illusions. It was so simple. A dinner confirmation at a luxurious restaurant called Lumiere, a place we once dreamed of visiting for our 10th anniversary. We never went because he claimed work demanded he travel that week. Now, here it was. A reservation. For two, a note reading, "Window seat as requested. She'll love it." A numbness came over me, as though my body froze to protect itself. When curiosity overtook me, I picked up his phone. We had always shared trust, so I'd never had reason to snoop. But that moment, my intuition, my survival instinct, overrode any notion of privacy. I unlocked it with our wedding date, ironically still set as his passcode. The evidence was right there, spelled out in messages between Lucas and someone named Sophie Walker, a young blonde woman in his firm's communications department. They had texted incessantly for nearly a year, from casual good morning messages to flirtatious late-night confessions that burned my eyes as I read them. Photos, short videos, inside jokes I'd never heard. Sophie, curled in Lucas's arms during a work trip to Santa Fe. The heartbreak wasn't even about a single dinner reservation anymore. It was the sudden realization that my life with Lucas had become a lie. He called to me from the shower, asking where his blue tea was. My face felt cold, as if all the blood had drained. I wanted to scream, to throw his phone across the room. But some voice inside me demanded I keep silent, keep calm. The plan formed in my mind within seconds. This would not be a screaming match, in our bedroom or a dramatic meltdown in the kitchen. If Lucas wanted a romantic night with Sophie at Lumiere, he'd have one. Just not in the way he imagined. That night, I lay in bed beside him, my back turned, my mind spinning with the knowledge of his betrayal. He slept soundly, or at least pretended to. Meanwhile, I felt the world shift around me like a tectonic plate had slipped deep underground. Everything I thought I knew was no longer stable. The very next morning, I kissed him goodbye as always, wishing him luck with his Japanese clients, a meeting he'd supposedly scheduled at the firm. The moment the door closed behind him, I called my university's HR department and requested a 3-day leave. Officially, I told them I needed personal time. Unofficially, I was preparing for the most difficult confrontation of my life. In my kitchen, coffee growing cold in front of me, I took a pen and paper to outline everything. My emotions were a knot of pain, anger, and, oddly, clarity. I wouldn't stoop to cliché scenes. My retribution would be silent and devastatingly precise, meant to show him that I was not the naive, blind wife he believed I was. I found Sophie's husband, Ethan Walker, via the firm's online directory and subsequent social media sites. He was an architect with a kind smile, presumably just as in the dark as I was until now. Then, I used the privilege I had as a university lecturer, an invitation to a guest speaker dinner. I crafted a formal email inviting him to discuss a potential speaking engagement at Lumiere this coming Friday. He accepted within 2 hours, polite and enthusiastic. When I hung up the phone after booking a table next to Lucas and Sophie's reservation, my hands shook. A swirl of heartbreak, adrenaline, and dread coursed through me. I knew I was about to blow up 4 lives, mine, Lucas's, Sophie's, and Ethan's. Yet, the alternative was to remain silent and let them continue. Letting them get away with it would have meant betraying myself. Friday night arrived too soon. I wore a teal silk dress, one Lucas once criticized as too loud for a formal dinner. I styled my hair in a neat bun and stepped into a pair of champagne-colored heels I'd never dared to wear before. The hostess guided me to a table near the window, mere steps from Lucas and Sophie's reserved spot. I arrived about 20 minutes early, nerves threatening to unravel me. Ethan showed up shortly after, looking slightly nervous in a dark, well-fitted shirt. He recognized me from my email's description, and we exchanged a handshake. We launched into small talk about sustainable urban design, a topic I'd gleaned from his LinkedIn profile. My eyes kept darting to the restaurant's entrance, waiting for the arrival of my husband and his lover. And then, there they were. Lucas in the gray blazer I'd gifted him last year, Sophie in a tight red dress that accentuated her youthful figure. They walked in laughing, arms brushing intimately. My heart thundered in my chest. I felt as though I was observing the scene from outside my own body. Ethan paused mid-sentence. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. I gave a short nod. "Yes. Sorry, just a little distracted." From the corner of my eye, I saw Lucas look in my direction, freeze, and nearly drop his wine glass. Sophie's smile faded as she followed, his gaze only to lock eyes with me. I turned back to Ethan, excused myself, and stood to head for the restroom, the final piece of my plan about to fall into place. Outside the ladies' room, I nearly collided with Sophie. She looked petrified, her usual confident stance replaced by trembling uncertainty. "You're Clara, right?" she asked in a hushed tone. I nodded. "And you're Sophie, the one who's been playing dress-up with my husband, while your husband is just a few tables away." Her face went ashen. "Please, not here," she whispered, eyes darting around. "Let's talk somewhere else." "Why not here?" I asked with forced calm. "Isn't this exactly what you wanted? An evening of candlelight and secrets? Maybe it's time for those secrets to come out." She started to speak, but then Lucas appeared, face pale. "Clara, what are you doing here?" I glanced back toward Ethan, who was watching us, concern etched across his features. "Ethan," I called. "Come here for a moment, would you?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears as Ethan approached. Lucas stood stiff, silent. I directed my words carefully, making sure no one else in the restaurant heard, but that the 4 of us understood. "Ethan," I said softly, "this is my husband, Lucas, and I believe this is your wife, Sophie." The shock in Ethan's face was painful to witness. Sophie opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Before any of them could recover, I turned on my heel and walked away. A few steps later, I paused and added calmly, "Enjoy your dinner, because it's all on Lucas's company card, right?" I returned to my table, where I requested that the waiter arrange a private room so the four of us could speak without gawking onlookers. 5 minutes later, we sat around a table set for four, the soft glow of overhead lighting making each guilty expression look sharper. For a long, pregnant moment, no one spoke. Sophie was dabbing tears with a napkin. Lucas kept running his hands through his hair. Ethan's hands trembled, but his face was set in stern disbelief. Lucas tried first. "Clara, I don't know how this all started. I cut him off. Start 3 days ago, when I saw the dinner reservation on your phone. When you confirmed every suspicion I've had for months." Sophie sniffled, whispering apologies. Ethan stared at her, heartbreak flickering in his eyes. "We deserve the truth," I said. "Both of us do. Right here, right now." Lucas began to speak. Sophie chimed in with excuses about feeling lonely or unappreciated. My gaze landed on Ethan. He swallowed hard. "I listened to you, Sophie," he whispered. "I believed in you, in our marriage. I reworked the layout of your home office, changed half our house to suit your creative taste. And you repay me with this?" In the end, there was no real explanation. Adultery rarely has a glamorous reason. It boils down to bad choices layered one on top of another. I told Lucas that I would spend the night at a nearby hotel, that I needed space. I also told him I'd expect him out of our house by Monday morning. His eyes widened in panic, but I was done with tears, done with excuses. I left Lumiere, head high, and checked into the Celeste Hotel across the street. The moment I locked the door to my suite, my composure shattered. I cried harder than I ever had before, raw, choking sobs that left me drained and trembling. 17 years of marriage, undone in a single night. Or maybe it had been undone much earlier, and I was just seeing it now. A knock sounded on my door. Heart pounding, I checked the peephole. It was Ethan. His expression looked just as shaken as I felt. I hesitated only a moment before letting him in. He sank into an armchair, burying his face in his hands. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, voice raw. "I didn't know where else to go." I recognized the wild confusion in his eyes, a mirror of my own. He asked how I'd managed to orchestrate the dinner without confronting them in a flurry of anger. I admitted that I had been anticipating something like this for months, that the texts and photos I found left no other option in my mind but a deliberate unveiling. He nodded as though grateful I'd included him, thankful I had spared him from ignorance. We ended up talking until the early hours of the morning, two strangers bound by the same pain. Over the next few days, Ethan reached out to me more often. He would check on how I was coping, and in turn, he tentatively opened up about his own story with Sophie. They had married young. She was bright and ambitious, but she had a restless streak he often struggled to keep up with. He confessed that, for a while, he thought she just needed more excitement, that he wasn't enough for her. "I'd always believed we were solid," Ethan told me one afternoon over coffee. "Yes, we argued sometimes, but she told me she admired my passion for design. I redesigned our entire house, picking furniture, carefully curating artwork, all for a space that she said was too dull. So I tried again, each time hoping it would make her happy. I never dreamed she'd find that spark with someone else." His voice shook and tears rimmed his eyes. He said he felt shame for not being enough, as though her betrayal was a direct statement about him. Sitting across from him, I realized how heartbreak mirrors itself in each betrayed person. I placed my hand gently on his arm. "It isn't about you not being enough," I said. "They made their own decisions to cheat. That's on them." Meanwhile, I moved forward with what I'd promised. I contacted an attorney and started divorce proceedings. Word spread fast among our social circles. In the weeks following the Lumiere incident, I found myself bombarded by phone calls and messages. Some of our mutual friends were supportive, praising my bravery. Others acted perplexed or even judgmental, asking, Are you sure you want to end a 17-year marriage over one affair? The notion of only one affair made my skin crawl. One friend, Margaret, actually said, "Men will be men. You should give him another chance." I quietly cut ties with that sort of nonsense. As for my family, my mother was shocked but supportive. "Whatever you need, I'm here," she said. My father, older and more traditional, asked if I truly wanted to go through with the divorce. Yet, after hearing the extent of Lucas's deceit, he ended the conversation with a quiet, "I trust your judgment." In truth, I could not have continued living that lie just to keep up appearances. Lucas tried to salvage his reputation, but I refused to keep his secret. I told his mother, his sister, even his best friend from college, Mark, about the affair. He called me furious, accusing me of ruining his life. I reminded him that he'd done that himself. His image at the law firm took a severe hit, and I heard whispers that he might be asked to step down from certain board positions. During this period, I was still teaching at the university. My focus wavered at first. Standing in front of a classroom of eager faces, I felt the weight of heartbreak pressing on my chest. But strangely, my work became a refuge. I poured my energy into lectures, research, and mentoring my students. An opportunity for a leadership position opened up, something akin to a departmental lead. My colleagues encouraged me to apply, pointing out that my track record and dedication were exactly what the faculty needed. It gave me hope, a reminder that life wouldn't stop just because my marriage had ended. I also decided to pursue photography, a hobby I had enjoyed in small spurts. Over the years, I signed up for a weekend photography workshop, learning to navigate angles and lighting in a way that felt refreshingly new. One of my favorite experiences was spontaneously traveling to the Rocky Mountains for a day trip to capture the sunrise. I hiked in the pre-dawn glow, camera in hand, feeling the crisp air on my skin. The mountains rose like silent witnesses, as though telling me the world was vast, full of possibility, and not contained to the heartbreak I'd been living with. New apartment was modest compared to the house I'd shared with Lucas, but I took pride in decorating it. Hanging photo frames I filled with my mountain shots, buying plush throw pillows in bright colors that I'd always secretly loved but never displayed in our old home. Each piece felt like an act of reclaiming my personal taste and identity. A few weeks after the confrontation, Lucas sent me a barrage of messages, lengthy emails, text apologies, even flowers delivered to my office. One afternoon, I heard a frantic knock at my door. I opened it to find him standing in the hallway, looking disheveled. "Clara," he started, voice trembling. "I've cut Sophie off completely. She moved away, resigned from the firm. Please, just talk to me." Part of me wanted to slam the door, but I found myself stepping aside. We ended up sitting in my small living room. The difference in scale was striking. In our old house, everything was spacious and curated for style. Here, the furniture was modest, the decor warm but simple. He pleaded for a second chance. "We spent 17 years together. I made a mistake." "Mistake?" I cut him off, my voice trembling. That's an interesting word for a full-blown affair carried on for months behind my back. He clasped his hands, eyes gleaming with desperation. "I lost my way. I never meant to hurt you." I almost faltered. Memories invaded my mind. The day we set our vows under gray skies that burst into rain right at the end of the ceremony. The time he stayed up all night with me when I was frantic about meeting a research deadline. My heart clenched. Was I truly ready to discard all those years? But then, I recalled the photos of him holding Sophie so tenderly, the casual morning. Texts they shared, the dinner at Lumiere meant for their romantic escape. I remembered lying alone in our bed many nights, wondering why he was so distant, blaming myself for not being more fun or more appealing. I looked at Lucas and saw a stranger who had chosen, over and over again, to lie. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced steadiness into my voice. I can't trust you anymore, I whispered. Nothing could erase the betrayal. He begged, tears falling, saying he'd do anything. Therapy, religious counseling, relocating to a new city. For a moment, my resolve quivered. The ghost of the woman I used to be, a woman who always forgave, stood behind me. Then I remembered the deep, hollow feeling in my chest when I first read Sophie's name on his phone. I remembered how easily he'd gazed into her eyes at Lumiere. No, I wouldn't betray myself just to keep him comfortable. I rose to show him the door. I'm sorry, I said, voice hollow. But we are done, Lucas. While I navigated the heartbreak, Ethan was coming to terms with his own. We stayed in frequent contact, sharing messages about the divorce process, leaning on each other in moments of weakness. One evening, he called me, voice subdued. Sophie reached out, he said. I felt my pulse pick up. What did she say? She wants to apologize. Or so she claims. She asked if I'd be willing to meet. An uneasy pause stretched between us. How do you feel about that? I asked. I need closure, he admitted. I want to hear what she has to say. But part of me doesn't believe it'll change anything. I encouraged him to do whatever he felt necessary for his own sense of peace. That weekend, he met her at a small cafe near the old house they once shared. According to Ethan, Sophie arrived in dark sunglasses, hair tied back, looking more fragile than he remembered. She tried to apologize, insisted she never meant to cause him harm. She claimed she was lost and found Lucas exciting, in a way their marriage hadn't been. How convenient, Ethan told me on the phone afterwards, letting out a humorless laugh. She says she's sorry, that she made a terrible mistake, but I don't think she really grasps the damage she's done. She asked if I'd consider trying again, maybe in a few months. My stomach turned at the thought. Did you give her any hope? No, he said firmly. I told her I'm filing for divorce, that I can't spend another day wondering if she'll be faithful. She cried, said she never wanted me to lose faith in love. And I just stood there, Clara, not knowing whether to be angry or pity her. In the end, I just told her goodbye. We were both quiet after that. The final chapter of their marriage had closed. I realized how heartbreak echoed similarly in both of us, leaving behind an indescribable emptiness that only time and self-respect could mend. In the months that followed, Ethan and I found ourselves gravitating toward each other for solace. At first, it was purely platonic, meeting for coffee, exchanging motivational texts, reminding each other that the pain wouldn't last forever. We attended some local architecture lectures together. He liked learning about the city's evolving landscape, and I found it therapeutic to explore a new area of interest. My photography hobby blossomed. I hung pictures of sunlit mountains and city skylines in my small apartment. I even hosted a tiny photo night, where I invited a few close friends and Ethan to see my progress. Their praise felt like a balm to my wounded self-esteem. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings inched along. Lucas contested some details, especially regarding the house. But I stayed firm, refusing to let him manipulate me. Friends and colleagues noticed the shift in my demeanor. Though I was still prone to moments of sadness, I carried myself with a new sense of determination. Professionally, I continued to push forward. My department head recognized my growing leadership and selected me to head a new initiative aimed at updating the business curriculum with more real-world practice. I started mentoring female students, sharing my experiences, not the gory details, but the lesson of valuing oneself, not tying identity wholly to someone else's success or approval. My confidence grew from a seed of anger and betrayal into something more resilient, self-reliance. Bit by bit, I realized I anticipated my chats with Ethan. We'd swap stories of mundane daily life, his struggles with the particular projects, structural design, my departmental politics. Over time, a gentle warmth nestled between us. It wasn't the wild rush of a new infatuation. Instead, it was the slow burn of mutual respect. One breezy afternoon, we took a walk along the South Platte River. He casually slipped his hand into mine as we crossed a small footbridge, and it felt natural. I glanced at him, the man who'd once been a stranger caught in the same whirlwind of betrayal. There was a moment when our eyes met, an unspoken understanding that we were on the same path, rebuilding ourselves from broken fragments. "I'm not ready to jump into anything like marriage again," I admitted quietly. He gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. "Neither am I. But I do want to explore what we have here. You're easy to talk to, Clara." My chest tightened, tears threatening to spill as I thought of how battered both our hearts were. But for the first time, I felt a genuine stir of gratitude for having someone who truly understood, who wasn't pressing me for a timeline or a forced label. We wandered through the rest of that evening side by side, the wind carrying away the last remains of the illusions we used to live under. Time passed more quickly than I would have imagined. The divorce was finalized in early spring. By summertime, I'd moved fully into my new role at the university and had begun collaborating on a small research project about sustainable business practices. My photography flourished. I organized a trip for my students to experience hands-on project management at a local nonprofit, snapping photos of them while they learned. A year after that disastrous night at Lumiere, I received an invitation to my old PhD advisor's retirement party, Professor Martha Benson at the prestigious Hotel Laëri. I had deep respect for her and decided to attend the event in a simple navy blue dress, wearing my mother's pearl earrings. I didn't expect any major surprises, just a pleasant evening celebrating a mentor. But as I stepped into the softly lit ballroom, my gaze fell upon a figure standing near the wine table. Lucas. He looked noticeably thinner, silver strands at his temples, a posture that lacked his former easy confidence. Our eyes met, and the world seemed to pause for a moment. He approached me with hesitant steps, a glass of wine in hand. "Clara," he said quietly. His voice was rougher than I remembered. I didn't think you'd be here." "Likewise," I said, maintaining a neutral tone. My heart thumped, but not out of longing, rather the surreal feeling of confronting a chapter of my life that felt so distant now. He sighed, gaze dropping to the floor. Professor Benson was always one of the few people who still talked to me after everything. I felt a flicker of pity. He looked genuinely regretful, weighed down by the consequences of his actions. "She's the kind of person who tries to see the good in everyone," I replied softly. Lucas held my gaze for a moment before speaking in a subdued tone. "I owe you an apology, a real one. I know nothing I say can change what I did, but I need you to know how sorry I am." I stood there, letting the words settle. Curiously, I didn't feel anger or heartbreak. It was more like hearing an echo of a distant memory. "I hope you find peace, Lucas," I said at last. He nodded. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I answered truthfully. "I'm okay now." Almost on cue, Ethan walked into the ballroom, scanning the crowd. The moment he spotted me, a smile softened his features. He wore an understated blazer, looking every bit the poised architect I'd come to admire. Lucas followed my gaze. Understanding passed over his face, and he gave a slight nod. "He seems like a good man. I'm glad." His voice quieted. "You deserved a better life than the one I gave you." I touched my fingertips to my heart, realizing in that instant that I no longer felt the need for retribution. I had moved, past the anger, grown beyond the heartbreak. "So do you," I said gently. "Just start again when you're ready, and don't hurt anyone else this time." He gave me a faint smile before stepping back, almost as if he were making room for me to continue forward. I walked away to meet Ethan, who welcomed me with a warm embrace. The retirement party passed in a blur of laughter, tributes, and stories from academia. Ethan and I sat together, occasionally breaking off to chat with other guests. Later in the evening, a slow, melodic tune played, and he asked me to dance. I accepted. As we moved gently across the floor, I remembered the lonely nights I once spent with Lucas, longing for exactly this sort of closeness. We left the party hand in hand, stepping out into the crisp night air. A canopy of stars blanketed the sky. I glanced at him, grateful. Despite everything, we had found a quiet, honest companionship. It wasn't a picture-perfect fairy tale. We carried scars, fractures from betrayals that might never fully vanish. But for the first time in my life, I understood that real intimacy wasn't about grand gestures or illusions. It was about trust, mutual respect, and the willingness to be vulnerable without fear. A year ago, I would have described my world as shattered. Now I saw it as rebuilt, not from scratch, but from the broken pieces carefully laid back together in a stronger form. Betrayal once nearly destroyed me, but it also forced me to confront who I was and what I truly valued. In losing Lucas, I found myself. I recognized my own worth, embraced my independence, and dared to open my heart again to someone who had also been wounded. We paused by a row of lanterns lighting the hotel's garden. I slipped off my heels, letting the dewy grass tickle my feet. Ethan placed a hand on my shoulder, offering his jacket, but I shook my head and laughed, feeling more at ease than ever before. I used to think betrayal was the end, I murmured, gazing at the shimmering lights. A total collapse of everything I believed in. Ethan traced his fingertips along my hand. And now? I turned to him, a small smile forming. Now, I think it was the spark I needed to finally step into my own life, to realize I can stand on my own 2 feet and be okay. Better than okay, actually. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to mine, sharing the warmth of that moment. We stayed like that, breathing in sync, letting the past slip further away. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of calm and determination. My phone pinged with messages from colleagues excited about the new curriculum changes, from friends congratulating me on my speaking engagement at a regional conference. I realized how far I'd come since the day I discovered Lucas's reservation at Lumiere. The sense of quiet pride was overwhelming. I couldn't control what Lucas or Sophie did with their lives. Perhaps they would repeat their mistakes, or maybe they'd learn and grow. But that was no longer my concern. My only concern was continuing to grow into the woman who stood up for her own worth, who overcame heartbreak and discovered a deep well of inner strength. People sometimes ask me now if I regret spending all those years in a marriage that ended so painfully. My answer? I regret the pain, but not the years themselves. Those years shaped me, taught me how to love, and ultimately how to let go when love became toxic. Had I never faced betrayal, I might never have discovered my fullest potential or realized how strong I truly could be. Stepping out of the shadow of a deceitful marriage, I found not only heartbreak, but also surprising kindness, especially in the form of Ethan. We've chosen not to define our relationship by the usual labels too. Soon, and that feels liberating. For now, it's enough to share coffee in the mornings, cheer each other on at work, exchange supportive smiles during stressful days, and continue healing side by side. I often tell my students in class, half-jokingly, that the key to good project management is the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. Life is no different. We plan, we anticipate, but sometimes everything crumbles. How we respond in those moments defines us more than the initial plan ever could.